A devoted family man is found murdered along the highway.
They smelled something coming from the back of the truck, and there was a blue tarp there.
We saw blood that was in that bed liner and immediately discovered it was the torso of an individual.
A member of his own family becomes the primary suspect.
Something may have been going on in the family that caused this homicide.
He said that he was afraid of him.
He has a lot of problems with this cleaning and stuff. Do you think women can kill him? Is he capable of doing that?
But the investigation reveals the true mastermind is motivated by lust and greed.
When we went into the garage, this room was actually set up for some S&M activity. The whole time she's talking to you, you could tell she was hiding things.
She was constantly talking about how she wished her died.
People are evil, and they will do evil things.
She wanted to do whatever she wanted and didn't care who she had to take out along the way.
May 15th, 1998. It's Friday night in Columbus, Ohio, and Sergeant Gary Lewis with the Highway Patrol is responding to a call about a possible drunk driver.
We got a call that a vehicle was traveling northbound on US 23. A description of the vehicle was provided. When I finally was able to catch up with the vehicle was parked in the northbound rest area. And I observed a male, a medium build, Caucasian, who was sitting in the driver's seat. I then positioned my cruiser behind him to, in fact, see if I could get some driving and see if this individual was impaired. A substantial amount of time had started to take place where he had not departed, but another sergeant had two vehicles that were reported high rates of speed coming southbound on US 23, and they asked for my assistance. So I departed from the northbound rest area.
Sergeant Lewis is busy with other calls for the rest of the night, so he is unable to return to the rest stop. 2 days later, on May 17th, another passing trooper finds the truck is still there, but the driver is not.
The trooper had noticed that the window was partially down. The vehicle was left unattended. She had then requested another officer to meet with her, which I did. We then started to look for really more clues and information surrounding this vehicle that had been abandoned.
They examined the vehicle, at which time they smelled something coming from the back bed of the truck. And there was a blue tarp there.
We then saw blood that was in that bed liner. We continued to look underneath that blue tarp, and it was immediately discovered it was the torso of an individual. We secured the scene and then started getting investigators and others there to the scene. Underneath that blue tarp was a white male, potentially in his mid-40s, wearing blue jeans, a T-shirt consistent with the company name, Ohio Concrete. There was a significant amount of blood and that blunt trauma to the head.
To the patrol officers, it's clear the victim was murdered. But the evidence suggests the crime happened somewhere else.
If it had happened inside the vehicle, it would have blood or blood spatter in the truck, and they didn't find any in the truck itself.
The pockets were checked, potentially looking for some type of identification. There was no wallet or ID located on his persons.
The vehicle was registered under a commercial license for Ohio Concrete Cutting and Drilling. They then contacted the owner of Ohio Concrete, Tom Lennox.
They determined the truck was used by an employee by the name of Richard Witte.
Description provided by Mr. Lennox almost identically aligned with our victim. that really led us to believe, in fact, our victim was Mr. Witte.
What happened to Richard Witte? It's basically a puzzle trying to put every piece together. Tom Lennox also gave Richard Witte's contact information, which would have been his wife, Kathleen Witte. They immediately contacted her to get information on her husband.
Richard Witte was born on October 29, 1947, in Toledo, Ohio. The men in his family had a tradition of serving in the military.
My grandfather was in the military. He was in World War II. That was service that he was very proud of and that our family was very proud of. My Uncle Jim had served, he was in Vietnam. He had served in places all over the world.
Looking up to the men in his family, Richard hoped to serve his country as well. But a car accident in 1966 prevented him from enlisting.
He was the only one in the car. He was definitely driving fast. He lost 4 fingers on one of his hands, and they sewed them all back on. But he ultimately lost his pinky, and he's in a full body cast.
But with the accident, he was never able to join the military. He just accepted it and moved on. He finished high school and eventually became a mechanic by trade.
He met my mom really shortly after graduating high school. They fell madly in love. My mother's name was Janice May Sutter. Everyone called her Jan. My mom was a bombshell. Like, she was just incredibly beautiful.
Richard and Jan were married when both were in their early 20s and went on to have 2 children together, Willow and James. In fatherhood, Richard found his true purpose in life.
He was a family man, worked for his family to make sure that he could provide for them and to make sure everybody was taken care of.
But their life wasn't always easy.
Neither of my parents made much money. We had lived in a trailer, and that caught fire, and we lost everything. That would have been when their marriage was falling apart, like officially. They divorced when I was super young. The story is that they just weren't in love anymore.
Although his marriage ended in 1979 after 12 years, Richard was a constant presence in his children's lives. And in his early 30s, he got a second chance at love when he met Kathleen Mueller.
They met, I know, at a Parents Without Partners event, which was an organization for single parents. And for whatever reason, she found him hilarious. And I mean, he was hilarious.
Like Richard, Kathleen was rebuilding her life after a divorce.
She had three kids from her first marriage, Angela, Jeremy, and Kevin.
The first time I met her, I would have been like 3, 4, and I thought that she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. I absolutely adored her. She was very dynamic. Like, people would meet her and be drawn to her.
Richard and Kathleen fell in love and got married in 1981.
He adopted all of Kathleen's children, and he treated them like they were his own children.
Kathleen and my father, they had a very loving relationship. They were people that were both very invested in, like, being good parents. That was their first identity.
By 1998, their 3 oldest children had moved out and started lives of their own. Kathleen's sons, Kevin and Jeremy, were the only children still living at home, but the Witte family remained close-knit.
The house kind of was an open door. It was the place to be for, it seemed like, the kids and their friends. That would be the house where people can come and go whenever they please.
Richard was 50 years old and living the life he'd always dreamed of, riding and fixing up motorcycles in his free time.
My father took a new job with Ohio Concrete Sawing and Drilling. He still would have been the head mechanic. I know he was pretty happy.
But this hard-working family man has been found murdered at a highway rest stop. And Ohio police want to know why. Richard's boss, Tom Lennox, tells police he left on a trip the day before.
Mr. Witte supposedly had been on his way to visit family in Toledo for the weekend, having left Friday night.
Do you have any enemies that you know of, either at work or in your personal life? At work, I would say no.
It was revealed that he really had a solid, outstanding reputation, had a great working relationship with his employees.
According to Tom, the only source of conflict in Richard's life was his adopted son.
Tom told him he has a really tough time with his son, Kevin.
Matter of fact, he just said that he was afraid of him.
Coming up, Richard's loved ones describe a volatile family dynamic.
If my father would get mad at him, that it would retaliate in some way.
But their prime suspect claims to have an alibi.
You left your house?
Yeah, we both left my house. I think so.
Yes.
As the first step in their murder investigation, Ohio police pay a visit to Richard Witte's large extended family. But with one of his children named as a potential suspect, they don't tell them what's happened just yet.
They go to Richard's home, and there are several individuals there. Kathleen, Kevin, Jeremy, also Kevin's girlfriend, Carrie, Angie, who is a daughter, and her husband, Donnie.
Kathleen had been notified by Mr. Lennox that the vehicle had been found early that day when she wanted to know why the truck was there without him.
Initially, the Highway Patrol did not tell her that Richard was a victim of potential foul play. They wanted her to come to the Highway Patrol building to not only talk about the red pickup truck, but to also possibly file a missing person report on her husband because she had no idea where he was. Kathleen's response was that her husband was going to visit his mother up in Toledo and that he had left Friday evening, and that's basically all she had known at the time.
They said, we need to talk to everyone right now. And they all agreed to go down to the police station and start interviewing.
We went downtown and we were shuffled into a room. I look at the nameplate on the desk and it was a homicide detective's office. And you're like, okay, now what's going on? A few minutes later, detective walks in, introduces himself. They then do explain that they have found someone and that we'd like us to go to the morgue and take a look.
Kevin remains under observation, while Kathleen, Willow, and James are taken to the Franklin County morgue to confirm the identification.
We all go into this room. It's me and James and Kathleen and some officers in there, and then there's a body on a gurney.
They removed the sheet. And
and Richard's laying there. I can remember Kathleen saying, yes, that's him. You know, that's my husband.
She lost it. You know, James went over to, you know, to help her calm down and to comfort her. I was absolutely in shock.
Although Kathleen is grieving, she is able to provide a brief statement.
Kathleen basically says that her husband, Richard, was on his way to Toledo to see his mom, that this is something normal that he does quite often. She was with her son, Jeremy, at her daughter Angela's house. They all stayed there until about 11:15 that night.
Kathleen said that her and Richard had a good marriage. She'd been married 18 years.
Of course, officers would like to ask Kevin's mother if he has a problem or had a problem with his father, Richard. What was their relationship like? She said they were doing fine. They did not have a problem, that Kevin was just growing up, but that they were okay.
You could tell not only by her demeanor, but by the way she was saying it, that she was trying to downplay everything. It really seemed Kathleen Witte would only tell half-truths, or she would stop before she would actually admit anything. So we knew she was hiding something.
When they return to the station, investigators conduct interviews with the rest of the Witte family and their significant others. They begin with Carrie Wendell, Kevin's teenage girlfriend.
What's the deal on his stepfather? You get along with him?
As far as I see, they're good terms.
How about overall? I mean, do they get along fine, or is there some problems there?
There is some tension there, but
What's that about?
I guess him being 18 and wanting to do what he wants to do.
Kevin, he was a high schooler. He was a senior. And they butted heads a lot. He skipped school. He made the teachers mad sometimes, and he just would not really deal with Richard's discipline.
In another interview room, Richard's son-in-law Donnie tells investigators about an incident that occurred between Kevin and Richard a few months before.
Close to the beginning of the year, Kevin kicked the side of the pickup truck because they got into an argument. Yeah, he has a lot of problems with discipline and stuff.
The most revealing statements come from Richard's children, Willow and Jeremy Witte.
So they've had a lot of physical confrontations?
Yes. They don't get along at all. Like if my father would get mad at him, that it would retaliate in some way. And there have been instances where Kevin got his mom, but
Kevin, he had become violent. And so ultimately, feeling unsafe from him was the reason that I had moved out.
When detectives speak to Jeremy about Kevin's behavior, he shares similar concerns.
Jeremy, you think Kevin or something, your father and him got into it and he just lost it completely? I mean, is he capable of doing that?
Yeah.
With most of the Witte family confirming that Richard's son Kevin is the likely suspect in his murder, investigators set their sights on the troublesome 18-year-old. They begin by asking Kevin about the last time he saw his stepfather.
Kevin said he had spent most of the afternoon at home. He was joined by his friend Justin Coleman.
Kevin stated that he and Justin were getting ready to leave, and Richard Witte was in the shower getting prepared to go visit his mother.
You left your house?
Yep. We both left my house.
Your dad was fine when you left?
Yes.
You heard from him since?
No.
What kind of relationship do you have with your stepdad?
We've been getting along great. There's a 1985 Mazda in the driveline. He's fixing it up for me.
Detectives know that Kevin is lying and suspect he may be hiding more. So they decide to confront him with news of Richard's death.
You ever been in the truck? You ever driven it?
No, it's too big.
Well, your stepdad was found in that truck. He's not alive.
He tried to feign surprise and emotion over it, but it seemed to be more of an act.
Kevin puts his head in his hands. He did not cry. It seemed like a very fake response. This is telling to the investigators. Why wouldn't he have maybe been more upset to hear that his father was dead?
We're going to do a search warrant on your mom's house. If we find evidence of something that happened to your stepdad in that house, you know who we got to look at, don't you?
No.
You.
Kevin, something went wrong. Now's the time to talk about it.
I think so.
Who did?
I don't know.
Despite his protests of innocence, investigators suspect Kevin's still lying and keep applying pressure.
This problem is not going to go away, Kevin. Just because something happens doesn't mean you wanted it to happen.
Okay, we need to get into confrontation.
Okay.
At that point, he totally opened up, and Kevin said the night his stepdad was supposed to go to Toledo, he and his friend Justin were smoking, and he must have thrown a lit cigarette into the trash can and accidentally caught it on fire.
Richard came into the room. He didn't like seeing that the trash can was on fire, so he confronts Kevin.
According to Kevin, Richard lost control and became violent.
He started hitting me in the stomach. It was really hurting. And I slammed his head a couple times in the door.
Where's all this take place?
In the kitchen. He got me against the wall. His hands were on my throat. I don't know, Justin thought he was trying to kill me at work, but he came up with a rope and started strangling him.
So while he's got you up against the wall, choking you, Justin comes up with the rope, puts it around your stepdad's neck. Then what happens?
He choked me to death.
His story explained not only the blunt force trauma to the head, but also the ligature marks around the neck.
There was an attempt to clean up the crime scene by wiping up whatever body fluid may have been on the carpet or on the floor. They also took the rope and some gloves and threw everything into a trash bag, and they were going to get rid of that evidence along with the body.
At this point, Kevin was asked how the body ended up at the rest stop, and he said that after Justin had strangled Richard, that he told him to take a walk. And he really didn't know how the body ended up in the truck.
Kevin, I mean, we could tell that he was on the right track, but we could tell that there were still some half-truths about what had actually taken place.
Investigators request a search warrant for the Witte home. In the meantime, to confirm Kevin's story, they speak with the friend he accused of killing Richard, 17-year-old Justin Coleman.
Justin then is approached at his home by the police for a statement.
The parents stepped in and they said that he needed to have an attorney present and that he was not willing to talk at this time.
Justin might not want to discuss the murder, but to police, the evidence speaks volumes.
We did go back up to the rest area in Marion to do more of a search. We were able to locate a black trash bag. It did have some towels, rope, the victim's identification, and some gloves.
At that point, you have enough to arrest Justin based on evidence they had at hand, but you don't have enough to go very far with him.
Coming up, the mastermind behind the killing is finally revealed.
You tell them where to dump the body?
No.
You're a liar.
And their true motive is brought to light.
The only way to afford what she wanted was to have him actually murdered.
On May 17, 1998, authorities in Columbus, Ohio are investigating the murder of Richard Witte, which appears to be the result of a long-standing feud between the victim and his stepson, Kevin. While detectives wait for a judge to issue a search warrant for Richard's home, they take a closer look at Kevin Witte's story.
He downplayed his part, saying that Justin was pretty much in control of everything.
That was not believable to the detectives because Justin really didn't have a motive.
And there are other discrepancies.
Kevin stated that he was assaulted by his stepfather on Friday and that he was actually choked, but we did not see anything that would have indicated any type of bruising from a potential choking on Kevin.
Some parts of Kevin's story also contradict what his mother, Kathleen, had told detectives.
Kevin and his mother were very close. She was protective of Kevin. We asked her the condition of the home. She stated that nothing really seemed out of the ordinary.
Kathleen hadn't mentioned anything about a fire in the kitchen trash can that damaged the carpet. Detectives wonder if Kevin is lying about the fire or if Kathleen held information back during her interview. When investigators confront her, she is dismissive.
She did not mention it to us because she knew that if she had to talk about it, it would probably implicate her son.
They continue to push her a little bit, asking certain questions, bringing up certain details that are not quite right.
Despite their suspicions, police have little evidence to prove Kevin is lying. Since he doesn't know that, they decide to employ a little deception of their own.
Some things have come to light since we talked to you last, okay? Your mom's told us the whole story.
Okay.
It didn't take long for us to be able to break down Kevin and get the truth about what really was taking place.
We did plan on getting rid of him.
Kevin did finally admit that his mother, Kathleen, was more involved in the planning stages of this homicide. She was the one that was enticing the kids to actually commit the murder on her behalf so she could get rid of Richard.
My mom's had enough of it. She no longer loved him. She wanted a divorce. One reason she didn't get one, she couldn't afford it.
Kevin also knew for a fact that he was going to be removed from the house after he graduated from high school.
Both Kathleen and my father, their relationship seemed very healthy and very communicative and very loving. That did change really when Kevin was like starting high school. He had become more and more physically violent. And my father was just holding on to this hope that once Kevin was gone, that they would be able to regain that.
But Kevin says his mother had no interest in repairing that relationship.
She was constantly talking about his health condition, you know, how she wished he died.
According to Kevin, his mother first approached him about hiring a hitman.
Initially, they were going to hire somebody with a gun, come in and actually shoot and kill Richard, but that plan never materialized. Nobody could find anybody that had a gun that could go in and do that.
When that didn't work, Kathleen offered to pay his friend Justin Coleman to help him.
Justin and Kevin were good friends. They had talked about different ways of getting rid of Richard Witte in the past.
How were you planning on Friday night getting rid of your father then?
I was just gonna grab him, and Justin was gonna choke him.
And you were able to butt his head into the door a couple times, and that's...
I used a frying pan.
A frying pan? Was it on the stove, or...?
It was on the counter.
Once Richard was incapacitated, Kevin says Justin strangled him and sang a song while he did it.
What was he singing?
Yeah, Amazing Grace.
For someone to sing Amazing Grace to him as he was dying is extremely bizarre.
Kevin explained to the detective there was a prearranged plan with Kathleen that he would text 111 on the pager to Kathleen when the homicide had happened so that she could return to the house.
To hide the blood evidence, they actually started the fire in the kitchen.
He put Richard in a tarp with Justin, and they put him in the back of the truck. Kathleen had a map so that they knew exactly where to drop the body off. A map from the area to Toledo, because Richard's mother lived in Toledo. Kevin drove the truck to a parking lot. Justin had picked up Kathleen's car to follow him to the rest area.
Kevin had no driver's license, so when Kevin was driving up Route 23, that would have been the reason why some of the calls came into the highway patrol about an erratic driver.
So, basically, your reward in this whole thing was getting rid of the abuse.
Yes.
Your mom was getting her freedom.
Yes.
What was Justin getting out of all this?
He got to have a nice prom with this girl who's had a crush on him for a long time.
How's that? Your mom going to finance it?
All we needed was $50.
People are evil, and they will do evil things.
Kathleen was a manipulator. As far as manipulating Kevin goes, that had been a very long process. I believe that he wouldn't have done it on his own.
When investigators confront Kathleen with the story her son has just told them, she claims it was all a misunderstanding.
The detectives told her she was going to be charged with this murder, and she started blaming her son, Kevin, and Justin.
I never really hoped that anything would happen.
But yeah, you went along with the game.
That's basically what I thought it was. It's just all talk. All talk.
She told investigators that it was Kevin's plan. She had nothing to do with it.
You had these discussions with Justin and Kevin, correct?
Mostly Kevin and then Justin later on.
What were the discussions?
Basically, the words were getting rid of him.
And there were discussions as to how?
No,
You going to help your son out at all and corroborate what he has to tell us?
I knew.
Have you? And did you tell Justin where to take the body? You're a liar.
Kathleen was willing to sacrifice her son and his best friend in this homicide so she could remove herself from any guilt. Kathleen made sure that she alibied herself by taking Jeremy shopping and staying away until she knew that the deed was done.
Less than 24 hours after the discovery of Richard Witte's body, Kathleen, Kevin, and Justin are arrested for aggravated murder. They are held without bail as police continue to build their case.
We still had the house to process as far as evidence.
They execute the search warrant, and they find tarps that match the exact tarp that was wrapped around Richard's body. Investigators also see the trash can that had the burnt carpeting.
They seized trace evidence of the blood that existed.
The search also reveals something unexpected about Kathleen.
There was a separate door that went into the new addition of the garage. This room was actually set up for some S&M activity.
A bedroom with a bed that had adult paraphernalia, toys all around it, including chains, restraints, etc. They just started to question, well, what does this have to do with Richard's death? Part of the search warrant allowed investigators to take laptops from the residence, and Kathleen's laptop showed investigators that she was part of a BDSM community.
Kathleen had done some type of web page where she would advertise being involved in S&M. To our knowledge, Richard was not involved in the S&M aspect of the relationship. It could have been Richard did not like the fact that his wife was online doing these sexual activities to where he may have wanted a divorce.
I do know that at one time, my father had drafted up divorce papers and threatened her, if things don't improve, these will be filed. I did not ask for details about what he meant by if things don't improve.
Another discovery makes it even more clear that money was her biggest motive.
Kathleen had purchased a $100,000 life insurance policy on Richard probably only 2 weeks before.
After finding this information out, it's important to note that Kathleen never mentioned it, and that $100,000 is much more motive to get rid of a person than the $15,000 he had through his work insurance policy.
She wanted to live and do whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, and didn't care who she had to take out along the way, who she had to destroy.
Six months after Kathleen Witte was charged with orchestrating her husband's murder, she shows prosecutors how far she's willing to go to escape accountability.
There was a gentleman who was actually in the cell next to Kevin who contacted authorities and said, I have something to tell you. And he let them know that Kathleen and Kevin had been passing letters back and forth using a book. They'd write the letter, fold it carefully, put it in the book, and then have that delivered to this inmate. Well, Kevin didn't know that this inmate was keeping the letters.
Have they said anything about how they're plotting to get off on this?
No, just that they want to turn the title of Justin. She said, like she said, she's going to stick flirting with her this time.
Armed with this new information, the state offers plea deals with reduced sentences to both Kevin Witte and Justin Coleman in exchange for their testimony. When Kathleen's trial begins in December 1998, the two teens describe to the jury how they were controlled by her.
Kathleen had promised Kevin quite a bit. An easier life with Richard gone, that he could live with her rent-free forever, as well as having his girlfriend there.
She also told Kevin that if Justin helped, Justin and his girlfriend could also stay at her residence for $25 a week for as long as they wanted to. Kevin also stated that in conversations after the homicide with Justin, Kathleen had told him that if I didn't love you before, you need to know how much I love you now, and that she actually had what he quoted to Kevin was tears of joy that they were able to actually pull this off.
How cold do you have to be to praise a child, a sophomore in high school, that just killed your husband, and be joyous about it?
The defense counters by reminding the jury Kathleen is not the one who carried out the murder. Kevin and Justin did that by themselves.
She still maintained any talk that they made about killing Richard was a joke, but that's not what the court found.
She was found guilty, and the judge gave her 20 years to life.
Kevin and Justin are each sentenced to 13 years in prison for their roles in the murder.
Kevin serving such a small amount of time definitely bothered me. However, we could not have convicted her without his testimony. So it was a thing that I accepted.
I named my son Richard Allen Witte II after my father. And I did it as a promise that I would always do my best and teach him to be a good person the way my father taught me to be a good person.
I want my father to be remembered for his presence, how he would fill a room with, like, mischievous goodness. I'll spend the rest of my life not wanting to disappoint him.
Human beings are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can imagine, and they lie with a straight face when the truth is staring right at them. I have sat across the interrogation table from hundreds of liars, and I tell you, it always boils down to one thing, and that is control. Let us look at Melissa Casillas. Here is a woman drowning in her own life. She is working at a national laboratory in New Mexico, but her actual full-time job is keeping a crumbling facade from crushing her alive. Imagine the psychological toll of that existence. You have maxed out credit cards, lawsuits, wages being garnished, and the ultimate humiliation of having your security clearance stripped away. That kind of relentless, suffocating pressure does terrible things to the human mind. It makes you desperate. It makes you vulnerable. Melissa is a mother to an 18-year-old daughter named Sierra. Sierra recently survived a horrific car crash that took the life of her best friend. A mother who loves her daughter does not just walk away from a wounded child unless she is convinced the child is better off without her, or unless someone else makes that permanent decision for her. Then we have the husband, Mark. My. Mark is a man who paints himself as the victim of his wife and her financial incompetence, yet he is the one pulling the strings. On the night his wife goes missing, he does not act like a frantic husband. He acts like a man trying to control a narrative. When a witness named Lloyd reports seeing Melissa staggering down Highway 518, what does a worried husband do? He drops everything and runs to that highway. Not Mark. Mark tells the police to ignore the tip because the woman was wearing the wrong colored sweater and did not have a limp. You have to be kidding me. Your wife has vanished off the face of the earth, and you are playing fashion police to shut down a search area. That is not the behavior of a grieving husband. That is the behavior of a man who knows exactly where his wife is not, because he knows exactly where she is. The investigators find fresh mud and a drop of blood on his hunting boots in his bedroom. Mark claims he has not worn them in ages and points to a non-existent spiderweb as proof. Criminals always believe they're the smartest person in the room, but their arrogance is always their undoing. 3 days after Melissa disappears, Mark changes the locks on the front door. Why do you change the locks if you believe your wife simply walked away to clear her head? You change the locks because you know she is never walking back through that door. But his alibi is solid. He was at work all day. So if his hands did not do the dirty work, whose did? Let's examine the timeline of June 26, 2025. The psychology of this day is fascinating. Melissa drops Mark at work at 6:15 in the morning. Instead of going to her own office, she drives back home. At 8:02 in the morning, she performs a factory reset on her old phone. This is not an accident. This is a deliberate, calculated erasure history. At 12:56 in the afternoon, she is captured on security cameras dropping off a sandwich for her daughter. Was this the fleeting, heartbreaking goodbye of a mother about to abandon her life? Or was she just a woman trying to maintain a sliver of normalcy while her world burned down? At 1:33 in the afternoon, she sends a text telling Mark to find his own ride home. 5 minutes later, at 1:38 in the afternoon, her new phone is wiped completely clean, along with her entire cloud backup. Erasing a cloud backup takes intention and technical effort. You do not do that if you are planning to take your own life. A suicidal person leaves a note. They do not leave a digital black hole. You wipe your digital existence when you are running from something or when someone else is forcing you to sever all ties so they can control your next move. By 2:18 in the afternoon, a camera catches her walking down Highway 518. She is alone, wearing a backpack, walking purposefully. The family points fingers in every direction. They blame an abusive former boyfriend named Diego. They blame a local man on a horse named Rick who mumbled drunkenly about finding a decapitated body in the mountains. People love to chase ghosts. They love grand theories about missing government scientists and foreign espionage. But in my experience, human disappearance is intimately, violently simple. Melissa Casillas was a woman trapped in a cage of debt, deception, and a toxic marriage. Someone knew how desperate she was. Maybe she thought she was walking toward a new life, a clean slate, a chance to breathe without the weight of the world on her chest. But out there on that desolate highway, vulnerability attracts predators. Whether it was a stranger in a blue truck, a hired hand making a problem disappear, or a husband orchestrating a tragedy from behind a desk, the result is the same. The husband knows more than he says, hiding behind his arrogance. The daughter clings to the hollow hope that her mother simply walked away, and Melissa's out there somewhere. I tell you, the dead cannot speak, but the evidence always screams. It just takes someone willing to sit in the quiet and listen to the truth. Humans are strange creatures. I tell you, they kill for the most ridiculous reasons you can possibly imagine, and sometimes they destroy a life simply because the devil inside them gets hungry on a quiet Friday morning. The year is 2007. The town is Winsboro, Texas. It is the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where secrets are supposed to be hard to keep, yet somehow the most brutal truth manages to hide right in plain sight. We are looking at a young woman named Brittany McGlone. She is only 19 years old. 19. A kid, really, but working harder than most adults I know. She pulls overnight shifts at a distribution center and works a second job at a discount store just to save up for nursing school. She has a future, she has ambition, and she has a beautiful heart. But on the 4th of May, all of that is stolen from her. She gets off work in the early morning hours and decides to crash at her boyfriend's house. It is a break from her normal routine, a tiny decision that seals her fate. By 3:30 that afternoon, Jeff and his stepfather return home from a road trip to pick up his grandmother, only to find Brittany dead in his bed. She is naked. She has been bludgeoned to death. The walls are painted with her blood, cast off from a weapon swung over and over again with terrifying rage. The weapon is gone. Her size 5 white underwear is missing, but everything else in the room is exactly as she left it. Now, any veteran detective will tell you that a crime scene like this screams personal. The sheer anger required to beat a sleeping girl to death is not random. It is deeply intimate. And then my deputies find something that makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The killer took a shower in the only bathroom in the house. You have to be kidding me. You butcher a young woman, and then you casually wash her blood off your body down her boyfriend's drain. That takes a special kind of cold, a level of arrogance that usually leads a killer straight into my interrogation room, because arrogance always breeds mistakes. We start looking at the tight circle of people who knew she was there. The boyfriend, Jeff, is an obvious target. They had a rocky relationship. She had recently been with another man during a brief breakup, but his alibi is rock solid. Surveillance footage puts him and his stepdad miles away at a convenience store exactly when they said they were there. Then we uncover a dark family secret. Brittany's grandfather by adoption had been sexually abusing her for years, and he was terrified she was going to expose him. Motive, you want a massive motive. There it is, a desperate man trying to silence his victim. But time cards do not lie, and his work hours clear him completely. My. The plot thickens, and the circle gets even smaller. This brings us to a ghost in the background, a man named Chad Carr. He is 25 years old, dating Jeff's high school-age sister Velva. Right away, that tells me all I need to know about his character. A grown man prowling around a high schooler is a predator looking for easy prey. He stops by the house at 8:30 that morning to get something for Velva, and they tell him Brittany is inside sleeping. He leaves, or so he says, but the timeline he gives us is too perfect, too rehearsed. He lists every single stop he made that day, trying to build a fortress of an alibi before we even ask for one. Innocent people do not remember their day minute by minute. Guilty people do, because they have spent hours rehearsing the lie. We find a gap in his story. Between 9:21 and 10:20 in the morning, he is completely unaccounted for. An hour is more than enough time to slip back into that unlocked house, commit murder, take a shower, and disappear. And let's talk about that shower. Later that day, Velva notices that Chad smells distinctly of her own soft soap-shaved butter body wash. She had not stayed at her house the night before, and he had not been inside to shower, supposedly. Yet he carries the scent of the crime scene right on his skin. It is a sloppy, pathetic mistake. We look into his past, and the monster steps into the light. Back in 2001, Chad attacked a woman in a trailer, hitting her in the head with a jack handle. A tire iron, the exact kind of heavy, blunt object we suspect was used to crush Brittany's skull. He claimed it was a misunderstanding, but the truth was he was having an affair with her and wanted to silence her. He is a man who uses blunt force trauma against women when he feels cornered or when the violent urge strikes him. He spent time in prison, got out in 2006, and went right back to his violent ways. When investigators search his place, they find white shorts and a shirt with suspected blood, and size 5 women's underwear, Brittany's exact size. But the evidence had been washed, destroying the forensic value. When confronted, Chad makes a very telling statement. He does not deny the murder outright. He simply says that our DNA will not find him on that girl or in that room. That is not the cry of an innocent man. That is the boast of a killer who thinks he cleaned up perfectly. He thinks he outsmarted the system. And for a long time, he did. Years pass, administrations change. And the case goes cold until 2021, when a new sheriff reopens a file. By 2022, Chad is finally arrested for capital murder. But the justice system is a fickle beast. A grand jury issues a no bill, meaning no trial, because key testimony is allegedly left out. Chad Carr walks away, back into the world, breathing the air that Brittany McGlone was permanently denied. But let me tell you something about men like Chad. They do not change. They do not find salvation, and they do not stop. They are driven by a dark, pathological need to dominate and destroy. He looked at a sleeping, defenseless 19-year-old girl and saw nothing but an opportunity to feed his wicked hunger. Brittany deserved to be a nurse. She deserved to live a long, happy life away from the shadows of the twisted men who preyed on her. Her family lives with the crushing weight of her absence every single day, staring at an empty chair at the dinner table. But cases like this, they are never truly closed. The evidence is still there, the shower drain still holds its secrets, and real investigators do not forget. I have hunted killers my entire life, and I know one thing for absolute certain. The past is a relentless predator too, and it is always right behind you. One day, the knock on his door will not be a friendly neighbor. It will be the sound of a cold, hard cell slamming shut, and the restless ghost of Brittany McGlone will finally get the ultimate peace she so rightfully deserves. The realization that the son-in-law had actively participated in the betrayal of his own family left the detectives cold. Chow had not only provided the key to their home, but he had also helped orchestrate the timing of the attack, ensuring his in-laws returned to an apartment where two killers lay in wait. Investigators quickly moved to arrest Daphne right at her Houston home. Inside her residence, they discovered detailed ledgers outlining the massive fees she charged her clients for spiritual services, including removing and applying curses. The ledger confirmed that she had been charging desperate families tens of thousands of dollars, preying on their fears and superstitions. The shadow of justice. With the conspirators in custody, the district attorney's office faced a difficult legal challenge. While they had confessions from Willie and Bobby, securing a conviction against Daphne Wright, the true puppet master who had never stepped foot inside the Arlington apartment, would require undeniable, direct testimony. To ensure that the woman who ordered the executions of Long and Hong was placed behind bars for the rest of her life, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They reached an agreement with Chow Tran, offering him immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. It was a deal with the devil, one that left the homicide detectives with a bittersweet feeling, but was deemed necessary to bring down the primary architect of the tragedy. During Daphne's trial in August of 2019, Chow Tran took the stand. He painted a vivid picture of a family gripped by fear, paralyzed by the belief that Daphne possessed supernatural powers that could destroy their lives if they did not pay her. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong Le, had grown so desperate to save her family from Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so they could collect the insurance money. Chow testified that he had left the key under the doormat, knowing that Bobby Guillory would retrieve it. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility, arguing that there was no written documentation of the $280,000 debt. They argued that Chow was a greedy, willing participant who wanted the $850,000 insurance payout all to himself, and that he'd used Daphne as a convenient scapegoat. In September of 2019, the jury returned with their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory were also held accountable for their violent actions, though Chow Tran walked away free of criminal charges, a reality that would forever sit uneasily with. The dedicated detectives who worked tirelessly to find justice for Long and Hong, the truth had finally been dragged into the light. The memory of the sweet, hard-working couple who had traveled across the world to build a life of love and family would not be forgotten. The community of Arlington healed, reminded that true fortune is never found in greed or fear, but in the quiet, honest moments of love shared with those we cherish most. The dawn call and a veteran officer's horror. The city of Arlington, Texas, in the early summer of 2012, was bathed in bright golden sunshine. Yet beneath its vibrant surface lay a complex tapestry of diverse cultures. The city was home to a large, close-knit Vietnamese immigrant community, people who had carried their rich heritage, spiritual beliefs, and hopes for a better life across the ocean to build a new future. At 7:29 on the morning of June 10th, 2012, the quiet of a peaceful Sunday was shattered. Emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice over the line was trembling, hesitant, and filled with absolute dread. Chow requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that the family had been unable to reach them since the previous evening. When the dispatcher asked for the names of the residents, Chow struggled to spell them out through his panic. He stated his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, who was in his early 70s, and his mother-in-law was Hong Lu. Chow explained that when his wife and teenage son went to the apartment to check on them, they noticed the front window was wide open. Inside, furniture appeared to be overturned and items were scattered. Terrified by the sight, the family remained outside, lacking the courage to step into the silent, darkened home. Officer Weller, a seasoned patrol officer, was the first to arrive at the scene. Pulling up to the apartment complex, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Welfare checks rarely occurred so early in the morning, and it was even more unusual to find an entire extended family gathered outside, their faces pale with anxiety. Stepping through the unlocked front door, Officer Weller switched on his flashlight and cautiously crossed the threshold. The living room was in complete disarray. Drawers had been ransacked, compact discs lay scattered across the carpet, and the sofa was pushed aside. All initial signs pointed to a burglary in progress. Weller called out repeatedly, but his voice was met only by an eerie, heavy silence. He cleared the kitchen and the bathroom before stopping at the entrance of the sole bedroom. The room was dim. Weller swept his flashlight across the space. At first glance, he saw nothing unusual and assumed the elderly couple had simply gone for an early walk or were visiting relatives. But as he turned to leave, his flashlight caught a series of dark smudges on the wall next to a small, narrow closet in the corner. The marks looked like handprints left by someone clawing at the drywall in sheer desperation. An overwhelming dread washed over Weller. Every instinct told him that something horrific lay behind that wooden closet door. He hesitated, but his duty compelled him to act. He reached out and slowly pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space, Weller froze. Huddled together on the floor were the bodies of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were tightly hogtied with thick layers of gray duct tape. Their heads and mouths were wrapped completely in tape, and there was blood everywhere. In his 14 years on the force, Weller had never witnessed a scene so brutal and tragic. He stumbled back into the living room, his mind blank and his chest tight. It took him several long moments to regain his composure before he could key his radio to request A. Supervisor in the crime scene unit. Peculiar clues and a broken American dream. Hours later, Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years of experience, arrived at the apartment. He, too, was shaken by the sheer savagery of the crime. Both elderly victims had suffered severe blunt force trauma to their heads and foreheads, injuries consistent with being struck by a heavy tool like a hammer or a crowbar. However, the most disturbing detail was the immense amount of duct tape used to suffocate them. As detectives processed the scene, they uncovered several highly unusual clues that seemed to contradict the theory of a simple burglary. On the living room coffee table sat a plate containing crushed prescription pills, laid out as if to be snorted, alongside a partially smoked marijuana cigarette. More strikingly, a beer bottle in the corner of the room was wrapped in a light blue bandana. To Arlington's gang unit, a light blue bandana was a well-known symbol used by local Asian youth gangs active in extortion and protection rackets. Leaving the bandana behind seemed like a deliberate statement. a calling card to claim responsibility. Yet Detective Stewart sees an instincts made him skeptical. The scene felt too staged, almost too perfect. Street gang members committing a robbery rarely resorted to such meticulous, personal, and absolute violence against an elderly couple who posed no threat. Stewart theorized that the entire scene had been deliberately set up to mislead the investigation. To understand the motive, police looked into the background of the victims. Long and Hong had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing their children to Arlington to pursue the American dream. They eventually established a commercial sewing business, placing their son-in-law, Chow Tran, in charge of operations and client relations because he spoke the most fluent English. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off. The business secured lucrative manufacturing contracts with major global entertainment brands. They bought a home, provided for their children, and watched their dream turn into reality. However, by 2011, their fortunes took a devastating turn. Major contracts were lost, the business plummeted into debt, and financial ruin loomed. In traditional Asian culture, when a family faces consecutive, unexplained misfortunes, it is common to believe they are suffering from a curse or a streak of bad luck. In such desperate times, families often seek out a spiritual advisor to lift the curse, appease spiritual forces, and restore prosperity. The Mystical World and the Houston Advisor. Through interviews with Chow Tran, Detective Stewart learned that during the business's lowest point, Hong and Chow searched local Vietnamese language newspapers. They found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, operating out of Houston, about 250 miles away. Daphne advertised herself as a powerful mystic capable of removing severe curses, bringing good fortune, or even placing curses on rivals if requested. Desperate for a solution, Chow traveled to Houston to meet Daphne in person. After an expensive and elaborate blessing ritual, the family felt a surge of hope that their business would soon recover. But instead of a turnaround, the family found themselves sinking deeper into debt. Over the course of a year, Daphne demanded astronomical fees for continuous rituals, running a line of credit that the desperate family struggled to pay. On June 11, 2012, autopsies conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed shocking details. While both victims had sustained heavy blunt force injuries to the head, those wounds were not the cause of death. Hong's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, and Long's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of tape. Both had died of slow, agonizing suffocation. This confirmed that the killers did not merely wish to restrain them. Their explicit intent was a cruel and painful execution. As the investigation stalled, with DNA and fingerprints from a marijuana cigarette yielding no matches in the FBI's National Codes database, Detective Stewart received an unexpected call. An agent from a major life insurance company revealed that they had received claims for 2 substantial policies on Long and Hong, totaling over $1 million. The sole beneficiary of these policies was none other than Chow Tran. When brought in for questioning regarding the policies, Chow explained calmly that since the business was in his in-laws' names, the policies were intended to ensure the business could survive if either parent passed away. Chow also provided an airtight alibi for the night of the murders. He explained that the entire family had gathered at his home to celebrate Long's birthday, playing cards until past 10 o'clock in the evening, after which another relative drove the elderly couple home. Every family member cooperated fully, providing DNA and fingerprint samples. None of their profiles matched the evidence left at the crime scene. Lacking direct evidence to connect Chow or any relative to the murders, the investigation went cold, remaining unresolved for 3 long years. A breakthrough from an unlikely source. The breakthrough came in the fall of 2015 from a completely unrelated incident. Police in Houston arrested a young man named Willie Guillory for stealing a horse, a felony in the state of Texas. When Willie's DNA profile was entered into the National Cody's database as a convicted felon, the system triggered an immediate red alert. His DNA was an identical match to the saliva found on the partially smoked marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene in 2012. At the time of the murders, Willie was only 16 years old with no prior felony convictions, which was why his profile had never been in the system. Confronted by Arlington detectives and the undeniable forensic evidence, the young man broke down. Crying hysterically, Willie admitted to being at the apartment that night, but insisted he was only there to assist his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his uncle had been hired to carry out the hit by a woman named Daphne Wright. Bobby had provided Willie with a house key to open the apartment door. They had brought the beer bottle, the blue bandana, the crushed pills, and the marijuana to stage a fake gang-related robbery. When Long and Hong arrived home, the two men ambushed them, while Willie held Hong to keep her from screaming. Bobby used a heavy object to beat Long unconscious. Once the elderly couple was incapacitated, the men used duct tape to bind them securely, dragged them into the bedroom closet, and fled the scene. The mastermind and the blood contract. Detectives immediately traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory. Facing capital murder charges, Bobby realized there was no escape and confessed his role in the crime. He explained that in 2011, he was unemployed, starving, and facing homelessness. Daphne Wright had exploited his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to take care of her clients in Arlington. Bobby revealed that Chow Tran and Hong Lu owed Daphne an enormous spiritual debt, which had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000 due to the ongoing cost of her rituals. When the family could no longer pay, Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She decided that the only way to collect her money was to have the elderly couple killed, allowing Chow to claim the insurance payouts and settle the debt. The most shocking revelation of Bobby's confession was how he obtained the key to the apartment. Bobby stated that Daphne had given him the key, telling him she received it directly from the son-in-law, Chow Tran, the witness and an incomplete justice. During a search of Daphne Wright's Houston home, detectives recovered a detailed ledger. It documented the exorbitant fees she charged vulnerable clients for her spiritual services, with amounts ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 per ritual. When questioned, Daphne remained cold, detached, and refused to speak without her attorney. Upon learning of the arrests, Chow Tran immediately severed contact with the police, communicating only through his lawyer. Financial records revealed that shortly after receiving the insurance payouts, Chow closed a sewing business and purchased an expensive new home, making several large cash transactions believed to be payments to Daphne. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a controversial decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. Taking the stand in August 2019, Chow portrayed Daphne as a greedy, manipulative woman who controlled his family through fear. He claimed they believed she possessed real spiritual powers and could inflict terrible curses on them if they failed to pay. Chow even offered a bizarre explanation, claiming his mother-in-law, Hong, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice to secure the insurance money and save the family from Daphne's wrath. Despite the defense's efforts to expose Chow as the true architect of the murders who wanted the insurance money for himself, the jury focused on the overwhelming evidence against the co-conspirators. In September 2019, Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also received lengthy prison sentences for their roles in the conspiracy. Though the case is legally resolved, the fact that Chow Tran remains free continues to weigh heavily on Detective Stewart and the Arlington police force. Yet they hold on to a profound belief that what is done in the dark will eventually be brought to light and that every individual must ultimately answer for their actions. In the vibrant, diverse heart of Arlington, Texas, a beautiful tapestry of cultures weaves together to form a resilient community. Among the many bright threads in this tapestry were Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They were a sweet, endearing elderly couple whose smiles could light up a room and whose generosity knew no bounds. They bothered no one, loved everyone, and carried with them the profound, time-honored traditions of their beautiful homeland, Vietnam. When Long and Hong immigrated to the United States in the year 2000, they brought with them their most cherished possession, their beloved family. They had decided to pick up their stakes and move across the world with their 3 children, seeking the radiant promise of the American dream. Arlington, a bustling city in Tarrant County, was the perfect place. It was a city where different cultures harmonized, home to a large, supportive Vietnamese community that had flourished since the late 1970s. Long and Hong studied the area carefully, knowing it would be a wonderful place to do business, nurture their family, and build a legacy for their grandchildren. With hope in their hearts, the couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to help manage the daily operations. Chow spoke English well and became the welcoming face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and clients. For nearly a decade, the family poured their love and hard work into their craft. Their American dream truly blossomed when they secured a highly lucrative contract to make garments for a commercial giant, bringing the magic of Disney into their sewing rooms. They were a prominent, respected family, deeply tied to the community, proving that hard work and a positive spirit could turn dreams into reality. But in life, just as in business, there are seasons of abundance and seasons of quiet. By the year 2011, the family experienced a gentle lull. The major contracts slowed down, and the sewing machines hummed a little less frequently. Rather than give up, the family looked to their cultural roots for guidance, believing firmly that a shift in spiritual energy can invite good fortune back into their lives. They sought a traditional solution, a way to heal their business and protect their family's future. Little did they know, their innocent quest for spiritual guidance would introduce them to a cast of characters that would turn their peaceful lives into a profound mystery, ultimately uniting a veteran police force and the community in a triumphant quest for truth. Chapter 1. The Search for Good Fortune. For thousands of years, many Eastern cultures have embraced the beautiful belief in lucky spirits and guardians of prosperity. It is a gentle tradition, one that brings comfort during times of transition. When families face major life events, whether it is a shifting business, a new marriage, or a need for healing, they sometimes invite a spiritual advisor into their homes to restore balance. Long and Hong were firm believers in this old-style mysticism from their homeland. They possessed a pure, trusting innocence, believing that there were gifted people out there who could lift burdens and invite good fortune. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong, found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in the bustling city of Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, advertised that she possessed a unique ability to clear away negative energy and restore prosperity. Trusting and hopeful, Chow contacted Daphne and asked for her assistance. Daphne agreed to meet Chow at her Houston home for a consultation. After a traditional ritual, the family felt incredibly uplifted, hopeful that the sewing business would turn around and that their days of worry were behind them. They believed their spiritual savior was the key to a bright new chapter. However, Daphne Wright was not the benevolent guide she claimed to be. She was, in reality, a rather cynical businesswoman who viewed spirituality through the lens of profit. Instead of offering genuine comfort, she began charging the family exorbitant fees. Long and Hong, driven by their deep love for their family and their desperate wish to see their children succeed, continued to pour their hard-earned money into Daphne's rituals. Slowly but surely, a financial burden grew. The family found themselves owing somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne was a loud, direct woman who ran her household and her business with an iron grip. When the debt grew too large and the family struggled to pay, Daphne's true colors began to show. She was not a healer. She was a collector, and she was determined to get her money, setting in motion a bizarre and complex chain of events that would soon baffle the Arlington Police Department. Chapter 2, A Peculiar Morning. The morning of June 10, 2012, began like any other sunny Texas day, but it would soon present a perplexing puzzle for local law enforcement. At 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a concerned call from 38-year-old Chow Tran. He was asking for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The dispatcher, a calm and reassuring voice on the line, asked the names of the individuals. Chow spelled them out carefully. His name is Long. Last name is Wenguyen. He is 70-something right now. Chow explained that he, his wife, and his teenage son had gone to the apartment to check on the couple. They had noticed an open window and saw that things inside looked out of place, as if items had fallen down. Worried and not wanting to disturb the scene, the family decided to wait outside for professionals to arrive. An experienced Arlington police officer was quickly dispatched to the serene apartment complex. With 14 years of experience, the officer had seen many things, but right away, something felt slightly unusual about this call. Welfare checks were rarely requested this early in the morning, and seeing an entire family standing outside waiting added an air of mystery to the crisp morning breeze. Upon entering the residence, the officer noted the telltale signs of a staged burglary. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered about and furniture slightly askew. The officer called out, but only silence answered. After checking the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, the only space left was the bedroom. The officer moved methodically, focused solely on finding the beloved grandparents and ensuring they were okay. At first glance, the bedroom seemed empty. The officer thought perhaps they had simply gone out for a peaceful morning walk. But as the officer turned to leave, flashlight in hand, a set of hand smudges on the wall near a small closet caught their eye. Relying on years of careful training, the officer opened the closet door. Inside, they found Long and Hong. Tragically, the sweet couple had passed away. They had been taken from this world, victims of a carefully staged crime. The veteran officer, though momentarily rattled by the sudden loss of two beloved community members, immediately stepped back into the living room, maintaining absolute professionalism. The officer keyed the radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Chapter 3, The Stage Puzzle. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, they were deeply moved by the tragic loss of such a wonderful couple. The scene presented a baffling array of clues. It initially looked like a robbery that had taken a terrible turn, but the seasoned detectives, some with 21 years of experience in homicide, knew better than to take things at face value. The scene was peculiar. To the sharp eyes of the investigators, the clues seemed almost comical in their exaggeration, as if someone had watched too many crime television shows and tried to recreate them all at once. There was a plate of crushed prescription pills resting on the coffee table. Nearby lay a marijuana cigarette, but the most glaringly out-of-place item was a beer bottle wrapped neatly in a light blue bandana, sitting squarely in the middle of the room like a theatrical prop. "This looks like a calling card," one detective mused, scratching his head. Arlington did have a history of neighborhood gang activity, and the local gang unit confirmed that the light blue bandana was a known symbol. However, the detectives remained highly skeptical. Most local youth involved in such groups did not commit crimes of this nature, especially against universally adored grandparents. "It is too perfect of a crime scene," the lead investigator noted, sipping a warm cup of coffee as they analyzed the room. It is too set up. I have every reason to believe this gang evidence is entirely staged. The team meticulously collected the peculiar evidence. They gathered a marijuana cigarette to extract a genetic profile, hoping it would lead them to the person who had orchestrated this bizarre tableau. They also collected fibers and carefully processed the area for fingerprints. The detectives were determined to solve this mystery, honoring the memory of Long and Hong by bringing the truth to light. Chapter 4: Alibis and Inquiries. Seeking answers, the investigators sat down with the grieving family. Chow Tran, speaking on behalf of the family, due to his strong grasp of English, provided a detailed timeline of the previous evening. The family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday. It was a joyous occasion filled with laughter, good food, and a lively game of cards. Chow explained that the elderly couple had stayed at the party until about 10:30 at night, before receiving a ride home from another relative. That was the last time the family had seen them smiling and happy. When asked about potential enemies, Chow was adamant. No one could think of any reason to want this couple dead. They were sweet, they were generous, they were hard-working, and they had great ties to the community. Chow also clarified that while some families prefer to keep cash at home, Long and Hong did not keep significant amounts of money in the apartment. He mentioned that the sewing business had been struggling and that they had sought spiritual help, believing the business might be clouded by negative energy. The detectives checked the family's alibis thoroughly. Everyone had been together playing cards, and their stories matched perfectly. Furthermore, when a laboratory returned the genetic testing results from the marijuana cigarette found at the scene, the profile did not match Chow, any family members, or anyone in the National Criminal Database. Adding another layer to the mystery, the detectives received a routine phone call from a major insurance company. Long and Hong held a substantial life insurance policy, valued at over $1 million, intended to protect the family business in case of tragedy. Chow Tran was listed as one of the primary beneficiaries. When asked about this, Chow reasonably explained that the policy was a standard measure to ensure the sewing business could survive any unforeseen losses. Despite conducting over 50 interviews with family members, neighbors, and business associates, the police found no solid leads. For over 3 years, the case grew quiet, resting safely in the hands of detectives who refused to forget the kind elderly couple from Vietnam. Chapter 5: The Absurdity of the Horse Thief. Sometimes the universe has a highly humorous way of delivering justice. The break in this deeply complex case did not come from a dramatic undercover operation or a high-speed chase. It came, quite surprisingly, from a stolen horse. In the year 2015, a young man named Willie Guillory made a remarkably foolish decision in the city of Houston. He decided to steal a horse. In the great state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was arrested for his unexpected foray into modern rustling, standard procedure required him to submit a genetic sample to the national database. Willie had just turned an adult, back in 2012, at the time of the Arlington mystery. Willie had been only 16 years old, because he was a minor with no prior serious offenses. His genetic profile had not been in the system when the detectives first tested the marijuana cigarette. But now, thanks to his inexplicable desire to steal a horse, Willie's information was entered into the system. Almost immediately, bells rang in the Arlington Police Department. The national database matched Willie's profile perfectly to the evidence left on the coffee table 3 years prior. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie into the station. Initially, they spoke to him about his parole violations regarding the horse. Willie confidently denied ever being in Arlington. "I promise you, I was nowhere around Arlington," Willie insisted. The detective smiled gently. "Well, that is why we are going to check your genetic profile again, because the science tells us you were, sitting right there in that apartment." when the detective patiently explained how genetic science worked and how they had found his exact profile on the staged evidence, Willie's tough exterior melted away completely. He broke down and confessed. "Yes, I was there," Willie admitted, "but I did not do it alone." Chapter 6. A Tale of Two Scammers. Willie unraveled a story that sounded like a script from a bizarre movie. He explained that back in 2012, his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job. Bobby told his young nephew that they were going to drive 3 hours north to Arlington to take care of some business. According to Willie, his uncle had a key to the apartment. Their master plan was to stage a break-in and make it look like a local gang had committed a terrible crime. The plan my uncle came up with was to throw stuff around, set up evidence to make it look like thugs ended up committing the crime, Willie confessed. "We had beer bottles, a blue bandana, pills, marijuana. My uncle actually left the remains of a marijuana cigarette. He smoked a little bit of it and left it there. It was a brilliantly flawed plan. By leaving the staged evidence to throw the police off the trail, Bobby had inadvertently provided the exact clue the police needed to solve the case." Willie revealed the true mastermind behind this theatrical plot, Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. Bobby had met Daphne through a friend. At the time, Bobby was unemployed, desperate, and struggling to make ends meet. Daphne, recognizing a malleable participant, offered Bobby $10,000 to travel to Arlington and resolve her debt collection problem permanently. Daphne was furious that Chow and Hong owed her money for her spiritual services. When she discovered they had a massive life insurance policy, her greed took over. She orchestrated the entire event, hoping to force the family to collect the insurance money so she could finally be paid her exorbitant fees. Armed with this incredible new information, the detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, in December 2015 to speak with Bobby Guillory. At first, Bobby was quiet, but when presented with a search warrant for his own genetic information, he realized the puzzle was complete. Bobby confessed, corroborating his nephew's story. He painted a picture of Daphne as a spiritual loan shark, a woman who controlled those around her with loud demands and false promises of magical prosperity. She was a mastermind behind this whole entire deal, Bobby explained. She dictated everything that was supposed to go down. But Bobby dropped one final, shocking twist in the laps of the investigators. When asked how Daphne had acquired the key to the Arlington apartment, Bobby pointed a finger directly at the family's spokesperson. "Chow Tran," Bobby said. Chapter 7. The Mastermind and the Truth. The detectives were blindsided by the accusation. They had developed a cordial relationship with Chow over the years of the investigation. To think he might be involved was a heavy realization. When they attempted to speak with Chow again, he immediately directed them to his attorney. Before diving into Chow's potential involvement, the team focused on the woman pulling the strings. In August 2016, detectives arrived at Daphne Wright's comfortable Houston home. Daphne was exactly as Bobby described, loud, direct, and completely in charge of her subservient husband, Howard. When asked about her business with Chow, Daphne was cold and evasive. She confirmed Chow was a client, but refused to detail the money he owed her. "What happens if someone does not pay you?" a detective asked. Daphne looked right back, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, they will pay." Despite her tough facade, the police had gathered enough evidence from the Guillories to secure an arrest warrant. During a search of Daphne's home, they discovered a hidden ledger. The book detailed her outrageous fees for supposedly removing curses and applying blessings. She was charging vulnerable people $10, $20, $30, and even $40,000 for simple conversations and imaginary services. The detectives were astounded by the sheer audacity of her greed. Daphne's husband, Howard, appeared genuinely clueless about his wife's covert operations, maintaining her innocence and insisting he knew absolutely nothing about the Arlington incident. Daphne herself requested a lawyer and refused to confess. believing she could outsmart the justice system. To secure a conviction against a manipulator like Daphne, the prosecutors knew they needed inside information. They needed Chow Tran to testify. Financial records revealed that since his in-law's passing, Chow had purchased a new home and abandoned the family's sewing business. The prosecutors approached Chow with an offer of immunity in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony about Daphne's operation. Sitting safely beside his lawyer, Chow spun a tale of fear and manipulation. He claimed that Daphne had essentially taken control of his family's mind. He stated that his mother-in-law, terrified of Daphne's supposed mystical powers and the dark curses she threatened to unleash, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice so the family could collect the insurance and pay off the spiritual debt. The detectives found this claim utterly ludicrous. No one believed that the sweet, joyous Hong Li would orchestrate such a bizarre end. The defense team during the trial would later argue fiercely that Chow simply wanted the $150,000 payout for himself, and that he had willingly participated, even leaving the apartment key under the mat for Daphne's hired men. However, the justice system often requires difficult compromises to catch the biggest fish. In August 2019, Daphne Wright finally faced a jury. Chow's testimony successfully painted her as the greedy, manipulative architect of the crime. Despite the defense's best efforts to discredit Chow and point out the lack of written documentation for the enormous debt, the jury saw through Daphne's facade. In September 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of her crimes and received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her reign of spiritual extortion was officially over. Epilogue: Light in the Darkness. While the legal outcome left some investigators frustrated that Chow Tran was not charged, they found deep solace in knowing that the primary instigators, Daphne and her hired accomplices, were no longer a threat to society. The lead detective, reflecting on the arduous 7-year journey, noted with calm certainty, "What is done in the dark will always come to light. I thoroughly believe they will all eventually have to answer for their actions." The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Li remains a poignant reminder of profound love of family and the lengths to which people will go to achieve the American dream. Their memories are not defined by the bizarre actions of a few greedy individuals, but by the beautiful legacy they built, the vibrant community they loved, and the joyful nights spent playing cards surrounded by laughter. This complex case stands as a powerful educational testament to the dedication of modern law enforcement. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, the absolute marvel of forensic science, and the humorous reality that sometimes justice rides on a stolen horse. It serves as a gentle warning to always seek practical, grounded solutions to life's challenges, and to cherish the real magic in the world, the enduring strength of truth, community, and unconditional love. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet suburban streets of Arlington, Texas, on June 10th, 2012. The air was warm, carrying the promise of a peaceful Sunday, the kind of day usually reserved for family breakfast and slow walks in the neighborhood. The city was a beautiful tapestry of different cultures, a place where people from all over the world came to build a better life. Yet, beneath this tranquil surface, a mystery was about to unfold that would test the resolve of seasoned law enforcement officers and challenge the community's understanding of trust. At 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center received a call that shattered the weekend calm. The operator, trained to handle panic with a steady voice, answered promptly. On the other end of the line was a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice trembled with a palpable anxiety as he asked for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The operator asked for their names to log the information into the system. Chow spelled out carefully, stating his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, noting the spelling letter by letter, and estimating his age to be in his early 70s. He explained that his wife, his son, and himself were standing outside the apartment of his in-laws. They had sent a teenage boy to knock on the door, but there was no answer. Looking through a window, they had seen that things were knocked over, and a deep sense of dread had prevented them from entering. They needed help. Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience, was dispatched immediately. Because it was so early in the morning, a welfare check was slightly unusual, but Weller approached the situation with the calm professionalism that defined his career. When he arrived at the apartment complex, he noticed the entire family standing outside. They looked terrified, huddled together in the warm morning air. It was clear that something was profoundly wrong. Entering the residence, Officer Weller immediately noticed the disarray. Furniture was moved, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and the living room looked as though a sudden storm had passed through it. He called out, his voice echoing in the empty spaces, but there was no reply. He checked the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. Everything was silent. The only room left to check was the primary bedroom. As he stepped into the bedroom, his initial sweep revealed nothing out of the ordinary. His primary focus was simply finding the elderly couple, hoping they had perhaps gone for a morning walk and forgotten to lock up. He was just about to turn around and leave the room, relieved that no one was hurt, when his flashlight beam caught something unusual. There were smudges on the wall, right next to a very small closet door. Every instinct honed over his long career whispered warning. He hesitated for a moment, sensing the gravity of what might lie behind that door. But duty compelled him forward. He opened the closet door and found Long Nguyen and his wife, Hong Lee. They had passed away. The scene was heartbreaking. The couple had been bound with duct tape in a manner that spoke of a deep, tragic cruelty. In that split second, Officer Weller knew he was standing at the edge of a profound mystery. He stepped backward, moving out of the bedroom and into the living room, taking a deep breath to steady his racing heart. He reached for his radio, bypassing any abbreviations or jargon, and clearly requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. When the homicide investigators arrived, including a veteran detective who had been on the force for 21 years, they were equally taken aback. The veteran detective noted that this was one of the most severe cases he had ever encountered. The evidence suggested a struggle had begun the moment the couple walked through their front door. Yet, despite the sadness of the discovery, the officers shared a quiet, unbreakable determination. They would find the truth. They would bring justice to this family. Chapter 2, The Dream and the Struggle. To understand the tragedy, the detectives knew they had to understand the lives of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a rich heritage, time-honored traditions, and a deep, unconditional love for their family. They were a sweet, generous couple who never bothered anyone. In their community, they were beloved, known for their kindness and their bright smiles. They had chosen to settle in Arlington, Texas, a city that boasted a large and vibrant Vietnamese community. The area had become a haven for immigrants looking to build businesses, raise families, and pursue the American dream. Long and Hong saw a beautiful opportunity to create a lasting legacy for their 3 children and their grandchildren. Upon arriving in Texas, the hard-working couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to manage the operations. Because Chow spoke the most fluent English in the family, he became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and navigating the complex world of American commerce. For nearly a decade, their dedication paid off handsomely. Their American dream materialized when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a massive entertainment corporation. However, business is often as unpredictable as the weather. By the year 2011, the family's good fortune began to wane. They lost their major corporate contract, and the sewing business started to decline rapidly. The financial pressure mounted, casting a shadow over the family's once bright future. In many cultures, sudden misfortune is sometimes viewed through a spiritual lens. The family, holding firmly to the ancient beliefs of their homeland, began to suspect that their string of bad luck was the result of a negative spiritual influence, a curse. For thousands of years, traditional mysticism suggested that spiritual advisors could petition forces of prosperity and protection to heal businesses and restore harmony. Desperate to save the legacy they had built, Chao Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Li, searched for a solution while browsing through a local Vietnamese newspaper. They stumbled upon an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston, Texas. The advisor claimed she had the power to remove bad luck, lift curses, and restore financial prosperity. Believing this was the answer to their prayers, they reached out for help, unknowingly opening the door to a tragic deception. Chapter 3. The Illusion of Evidence. Back at the apartment, the crime scene unit was meticulously cataloging every detail. The detectives were initially puzzled by the sheer aggression of the crime. Robberies did not typically escalate to such extremes unless there was a deeply personal motive or a calculated plan. As they combed through the scattered belongings, the investigators found several items that seemed oddly out of place. On the coffee table rested a plate of crushed prescription pills, arranged as if prepared for consumption. Nearby lay the remains of a marijuana cigarette. But the most glaring piece of evidence was a blue cloth bandana wrapped deliberately around a glass beer bottle. In Arlington, certain local groups were known to use specific colors, like light blue, to mark their territory or claim responsibility for illicit activities. The detectives consulted with the specialized gang unit, who confirmed the color's significance. It appeared to be a calling card. However, the seasoned homicide detectives possessed a healthy skepticism. The clues felt too obvious, too neatly arranged. Gang members typically avoided leaving such blatant, theatrical evidence at a scene, especially one of this magnitude. It was as if someone had watched a television show about criminals and tried to recreate it. The investigators theorized that the scene had been intentionally staged to mislead them. Despite their doubts about the gang theory, the detectives treated every piece of evidence like gold. They carefully collected the marijuana cigarette to extract a deoxyribonucleic acid profile. They took hair fibers, swab surfaces, and meticulously processed the duct tape for fingerprints. They were hopeful that modern science would cut through the theatrical deception and point them toward the real perpetrators. Chapter 4. Alibis and Hidden Fortunes. The investigation naturally progressed to interviewing the family members. Given the language barrier with some of the older relatives, Chao Tran acted as the primary spokesperson. Detective Stewart sat down with the 38-year-old man, observing his demeanor carefully. Chao explained that on the evening of June 9th, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long Wen's birthday. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion. According to Chao, his in-laws arrived at his house around 4:30 in the afternoon. They ate together, laughed, and played card games until shortly after 10 o'clock at night. Another family member then gave the elderly couple a ride home. That was the last time they were seen alive. When asked about potential motives, Chao maintained that his in-laws had no enemies. They did not keep large sums of cash at home, and their struggling sewing business made them unlikely targets for a lucrative robbery. Chao cooperated fully, providing timelines and answering every question without hesitation. He and the rest of the family provided genetic samples and fingerprints to be compared against the evidence found at the scene. With solid alibis and cooperative behavior, the family members did not immediately appear as suspects. But routine phone calls soon shifted the detective's perspective. An insurance company contacted the police department to report a massive life insurance policy held by the deceased couple. The policy was valued at over $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was none other than Chao Tran. When questioned about the substantial financial safety net, Chow explained that the policies were purchased years ago to ensure the business could continue if a key family member passed away. While the explanation was plausible, the existence of such a large sum of money introduced a powerful potential motive into the investigation. Days turned into weeks, and the laboratory results finally returned. To the immense disappointment of the investigative team, the genetic profile extracted from a marijuana cigarette did not match Chow Tran, any family member, or any individual currently registered in the combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system, the national database managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The database only housed profiles of adults convicted of felony offenses. If the perpetrator was a minor or someone with a clean record, their genetic blueprint would remain invisible. The detectives had cast a wide net, interviewing over 50 people, including neighbors, extended family, and business associates. They left no stone unturned, yet the lead slowly evaporated. For 3 long years, the case went entirely cold. But the detectives never forgot Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They simply waited for science and time to align. Chapter 5: The Horse Thief and the Science of Justice. Justice has a curious way of revealing itself, often through the most unexpected avenues. In October 2015, over 3 years after the tragic loss of the elderly couple, a bizarre incident breathed new life into the stagnant investigation. Hundreds of miles away, a young man named Willie Guillory made a foolish decision. He stole a horse. In the state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was apprehended for the theft, he was processed into the criminal justice system as an adult. He was swabbed, and his genetic profile was uploaded into the national database. Willie was 16 years old in 2012. Because he was a juvenile at the time of the murders, his genetic material had not been on file when the detectives first searched the database. But now, as an adult with a felony conviction, his information triggered a system-wide alert. The computer servers silently matched his profile to the biological material left on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. On October 17, 2015, Arlington detectives brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. Initially, they approached him regarding a violation of his parole, keeping their true intentions hidden. When they finally steered the conversation toward the events in Arlington 3 years prior, Willie was defensive. He swore he had never been to the city and insisted he had no involvement. The detectives, employing a brilliant mix of patience and educational strategy, gently explained the irrefutable nature of genetic science. They explained how human biology leaves an invisible but permanent signature. When confronted with the undeniable fact that his unique biological code was found inside the apartment, Willie's tough exterior crumbled. He broke down in tears and confessed. Willie admitted that he was present at the scene, but he insisted he did not act alone. He pointed the finger at his uncle, a 49-year-old man named Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, life had left him with few choices, and when his uncle commanded him to help with a job in Arlington, he felt compelled to obey. Willie confirmed the detective's long-held theory. The crime scene was entirely staged. The plan had been to scatter items, knock over furniture, and leave behind the blue bandana, the pills, and a beer bottle to create the illusion of a random gang-related attack. Willie confessed that he had smoked a portion of the marijuana cigarette to add to the authenticity of the scene, inadvertently leaving behind the very evidence that would secure his downfall. The young man described a harrowing sequence of events. But what struck the detectives most was the revelation of a larger conspiracy. Willie claimed that neither he nor his uncle had any personal vendetta against the elderly couple. They were simply hired hands. The entire plot was orchestrated by a woman Willie had met through his uncle, a spiritual advisor from Houston named Daphne Wright. Chapter 6: The Spiritual Trap. The pieces of the puzzle were finally snapping together. The detectives now knew this was not a random act of violence, nor was it a gang initiation. It was a calculated murder for hire plot rooted in greed and manipulation. They turned their attention to building a comprehensive profile of Daphne Wright. Daphne was a 44-year-old woman living in Houston, married with 3 daughters. She presented herself to the community as a powerful spiritual advisor. For a hefty fee, she promised to turn struggling businesses around, banish bad luck, and bring prosperity to families facing hardship. She was a dominant personality, charismatic and loud, effectively ruling her household and commanding absolute obedience from her clients. When detectives reached out to Chow Tran to ask if he knew Daphne Wright, his reaction was highly suspicious. Instead of cooperating, as he had in the past, Chow immediately directed the investigators to his attorney. The sudden wall of legal defense suggested that Chow knew the net was tightening. To bridge the gap between Chow and Daphne, the detectives needed to speak with the middleman, Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, they traveled to Katy, Texas, to apprehend the 52-year-old uncle. Bobby had no prior criminal history. When faced with the overwhelming evidence, including a search warrant for his own biological sample, Bobby surrendered to the weight of his guilt. During his interrogation, Bobby expressed deep remorse, claiming he had been desperately poor and hungry in 2011 when he first met Daphne. Daphne recognized his vulnerability and offered him $10,000 to carry out the hit. Bobby revealed the dark truth about Daphne's spiritual business. She was functioning as a mystical loan shark. Bobby explained that despite Daphne's expensive rituals, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee's business never improved. They remained trapped in financial distress. Yet, pushed by fear and a deeply ingrained belief in Daphne's claimed spiritual authority, Chow Tran had continued to purchase her services on credit. The debt had ballooned to an astonishing sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, she discovered that the family was virtually bankrupt. However, she also learned of the massive life insurance policies. Seeing an opportunity for a massive payout, Daphne orchestrated a plan to eliminate the elderly couple so the family could collect the insurance, money, and settle their supernatural debt. When detectives asked Bobby how he and Willie gained access to the apartment without forcing the door, Bobby provided a shocking answer. He claimed that Daphne had given them a key. And when asked where Daphne acquired the key, Bobby stated firmly that it came from Chow Tran. Chapter 7. The Betrayal and the Trial. The detectives were stunned by the depths of betrayal. They executed an arrest warrant for Daphne right at her Houston home. During the search of her residence, investigators uncovered meticulously kept ledgers detailing her spiritual fees. The documents showed she was charging desperate people tens of thousands of dollars for her alleged services. Daphne, however, remained silent, demanding her lawyer and refusing to cooperate. Meanwhile, investigators scrutinized Chow Tran's financial records. They discovered that following the tragic passing of his in-laws and the subsequent insurance payout, Chow had purchased a new home and permanently closed the family's sewing business. The circumstantial evidence strongly suggested he was a willing participant in the scheme to sacrifice his elders for financial gain. However, the legal system requires concrete proof. To ensure the conviction of the mastermind, Daphne Wright, the prosecution faced a difficult moral and strategic dilemma. They needed insider testimony to prove that Daphne had hired the hitmen and orchestrated the plot. To secure this testimony, they offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full cooperation on the witness. Stunned, it was a deal with the devil, but a necessary step to dismantle the criminal enterprise. With his attorney present, Chow spun a bizarre narrative. He claimed that Daphne had exerted an overwhelming psychological control over his mind and body. He alleged that it was actually his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, who had volunteered to be sacrificed to save the family from Daphne's spiritual wrath. The investigators found this claim utterly ludicrous, recognizing it as a desperate attempt by Chow to minimize his own monstrous greed. Still, His testimony was the key to unlocking a conviction. In August of 2019, Daphne Wright's trial began. The courtroom became a theater where science, human frailty, and the pursuit of justice collided. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a ruthless extortionist. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility, pointing out the lack of any digital communication, proving the enormous debt, and arguing that Chow himself was the true mastermind who pocketed the $850,000 payout. Despite the defense's efforts to shift the blame entirely onto Chow, the jury carefully weighed the evidence. They considered the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory, the biological evidence, the ledgers found in Daphne's home, and the tragic sequence of events. In September of 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to spend the remainder of her life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced severe consequences for their actions, ensuring they could no longer pose a threat to society. Chapter 8, A Legacy of Light. The resolution of the case brought a profound sense of relief to the Arlington Police Department and the local community, though it carried a bittersweet undertone. It was immensely frustrating for the dedicated detectives that Chow Tran, shielded by his immunity deal, walked away free. Yet, the investigators held on to a powerful, enduring belief. Truth eventually finds its way into the light, and those who commit wrongdoings ultimately face the consequences of their actions, whether in a courtroom or through the relentless weight of their own conscience. The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee is not solely defined by the tragic circumstances of their passing. It is a story of incredible resilience, a testament to a beautiful couple who crossed oceans to build a dream. They were a prominent, respected Asian family whose legacy was one of hard work, generosity, and deep devotion to their community. This complex investigation showcased the brilliance of modern forensics, proving that the tiniest invisible trace of biological material can bridge the gap of years and miles to deliver justice. It highlighted the unwavering dedication of public servants who refuse to let a case remain cold. Most importantly, it serves as an educational reminder of the dangers of exploitation, urging communities to rely on logic, mutual support, and true financial counsel rather than falling prey to those who peddle fear under the guise of mysticism. While the shadows of the past can never be fully erased, the light of justice shines brightly in Arlington. The memory of the gentle couple endures, inspiring those who knew them to live with kindness and to cherish the bonds of family, proving that love and truth will always outlast deceit and darkness. The morning sun rose over the city of Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden glow across the quiet suburban neighborhoods that defined this vibrant corner of Tarrant County. It was a place where dreams were built and cultures converged, creating a peaceful community where everyone worked hard to secure a bright future for their children. Among the many families who had found a home here, the local community held deep values of family unity, respect, and mutual support. Neighbors looked out for one another, businesses thrived on trust, and the gentle rhythm of daily life brought a sense of shared harmony to everyone who lived there. Among the most respected members of this close-knit neighborhood were an elderly gentleman named Long Nguyen and his gentle wife, Hong Lu, having traveled to the United States many years prior to build their lives anew. They brought with them a profound dedication to their heritage and a deep love for their family. They were a bright example of kindness and perseverance, always greeting others with warm smiles and offering assistance whenever someone needed a helping hand. To the entire neighborhood, they were a sweet, peaceful couple who never caused any trouble and focused entirely on creating a positive future for their children and grandchildren. Their family commercial sewing business was the heart of their daily activities, a collaborative effort where everyone contributed. They spent long, productive hours working alongside their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who helped manage the daily operations and communication with various local partners. Chow was an articulate 38-year-old man who took great pride in representing the family. Enterprise. For a long time, the business flourished, securing notable contracts that filled the family with immense hope. However, when economic conditions changed and those major agreements concluded, the business began to face significant challenges. During times of difficulty, people often looked to traditional beliefs for guidance, comfort, and a sense of direction. For generations, traditional cultural practices emphasized seeking harmony, peace, and spiritual balance to navigate the natural trials of life, hoping to invite positive energy back into their lives and restore the success of their commercial sewing workshop. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Le, decided to consult a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of a residence located in the city of Houston. Daphne advertised services aimed at helping families overcome obstacles, lifting negative influences, and welcoming good fortune back into their homes and enterprises. Eager to support the family and protect the legacy they had built, Chow traveled to Houston for a consultation. He participated in traditional rituals designed to foster hope and peace, returning to Arlington with a renewed sense of optimism that their difficulties would soon transform into positive achievements. However, as the months passed, the situation grew more complex. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at approximately 7:29 in the morning, emergency services received a call requesting a welfare check at the residence of the elderly couple. Chow Tran explained that family members had gathered outside the apartment and were concerned because there was no response at the door, though an open window suggested someone should be home. Officer Weller arrived quickly at the location, observing the concerned family waiting patiently outside. Upon entering the apartment to ensure everyone was safe, the officer noticed that the rooms were in complete disarray, showing clear signs of a serious disturbance. While checking the residence, Officer Weller located the elderly couple inside a small bedroom closet. They had been tightly bound with heavy adhesive tape and were completely unresponsive. The responding officer immediately requested the assistance of a supervisor and the specialized team to secure the location and begin a thorough investigation. When the primary investigators arrived at the scene, they observed the severe nature of the incident. The room showed clear signs of a struggle, with household items and compact discs scattered across the floor. In the living room, detectives discovered several objects, including a blue bandana wrapped around a bottle and other materials that initially suggested the involvement of local youth gangs known to operate in the wider region. However, experienced investigators immediately felt a sense of skepticism, realizing that the arrangement of the items appeared unusual, almost as if someone had deliberately tried to create the appearance of a random burglary. The specialized team carefully gathered all potential physical evidence, including hair fibers, prints, and materials from the scene, to establish a clear profile of whoever had entered the apartment. Meanwhile, detectives conducted detailed interviews with the family members to understand the background of the sweet and hardworking couple. Chow Tran acted as the main spokesperson for the family, explaining that the night before the incident, they had all gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday, enjoying a wonderful evening together until approximately 10 o'clock at night. A detailed review by the medical examiner confirmed that the gentle couple had tragically passed away due to suffocation resulting from the restrictive layers of tape applied to their faces. This revelation strengthened the determination of the investigators to uncover complete truth behind this tragic event, ensuring that the peaceful values of the community would be upheld. As the days progressed, a routine notification from an insurance company introduced a new development to the case. Investigators learned that the elderly couple held substantial life insurance policies totaling a significant amount, close to $1 million, with Chow Tran designated as a major beneficiary. When asked about this detail, Chow explained that the policies were originally established to protect the continuity of the commercial sewing business and provide long-term security for the grandchildren. He also provided a verified account of his activities on the night of the incident, explaining that the family had remained together playing cards until late in the evening. The laboratory analysis of the physical evidence collected from the scene did not reveal an immediate match with any existing profiles in the national database, because the database primarily recorded individuals with prior major adult convictions. Investigators suspected that the person responsible might have been a minor at the time, meaning their profile would not yet be registered, with no further immediate leads. The investigation continued quietly for more than 2 years as detectives diligently looked for new information. The breakthrough occurred in October 2015 when a young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for an unrelated felony offense involving a horse. Because a felony charge required the collection and submission of genetic markers to the national database, Willie's profile was officially recorded for the first time. The system immediately identified a precise match with the physical evidence retrieved from the Arlington apartment 3 years earlier. Detectives immediately brought the 19-year-old Willie Guillory in for questioning. Confronted with the undeniable scientific data, the young man broke down and provided a complete account of what had occurred. He confessed that in the summer of 2012, when he was 16 years old, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had asked him to assist with a task in Arlington. Willie explained that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter easily and deliberately arrange the items to make the incident look like the work of a random street gang. Willie further revealed that the entire plan had been organized by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. According to Willie, Daphne had expressed intense anger over an outstanding financial debt, stating clearly that if the funds were not provided, she wanted the couple removed permanently. Following this critical revelation, investigators quickly located the 52-year-old Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas. In December of 2015, facing the serious charges against him, Bobby also chose to cooperate fully, explaining that he'd been experiencing extreme financial distress at the time and had been promised a payment of $10,000 by Daphne Wright to carry out the instruction. Bobby explained that the financial relationship between the family and the spiritual advisor had grown increasingly strained. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law had continued to request Daphne's services over a long period, running up an informal credit balance that eventually grew to between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded full payment, the family was unable to produce the cash, leading to a discussion about utilizing the substantial life insurance policies to cover the total amount. Most significantly, Bobby asserted that the key to the residence had been obtained through Chow Tran. With these detailed accounts, detectives turned their full focus toward Daphne Wright at her Houston residence. Investigators discovered a structured home where Daphne exercised significant influence over daily affairs. A thorough search of property revealed meticulous business records indicating that she charged substantial sums for her traditional services, while her husband maintained that he had absolutely no knowledge of any improper activities. Daphne remained quiet, choosing to communicate only through her legal representative. To ensure a strong and complete presentation for the court, prosecutors realized they needed direct testimony regarding the origin of the plan. They offered an agreement of immunity to Chow Tran in exchange for his full and truthful account of the events during the upcoming trial. Chow Tran explained that his family felt an overwhelming sense of psychological pressure, believing that Daphne possessed powerful spiritual capabilities that could bring great misfortune upon them if the debt remained unpaid. He claimed that his mother-in-law, out of an intense desire to protect the rest of the family from financial ruin, had initially suggested sacrificing her own well-being so the insurance proceeds could satisfy the outstanding balance. Chow stated that Daphne had strongly supported the idea, expanding the plan to include both elders to ensure the total insurance payout would completely cover the outstanding debt. He admitted that he had placed the key in a designated location outside the apartment for the individuals to retrieve. In August of 2019, the formal trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow Tran presented his detailed testimony, describing the intense financial demands and the atmosphere of pressure that had developed over the preceding years. The defense team strongly challenged his statements, arguing that Chow had acted out of personal motivation to secure the insurance funds for himself and had utilized a narrative of spiritual influence to shift responsibility away from his own actions. The members of the jury evaluated all the testimony, the financial documents, and the unique cultural context presented throughout the proceedings. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing a definitive legal resolution to the case. The entire account served as a profound reminder to the community about the vital importance of transparency, honesty, and mutual care during times of difficulty. It highlighted the value of seeking positive, open solutions to life's challenges, and reinforced the strength of a neighborhood dedicated to justice and the well-being of every resident. The memory of the sweet, hard-working elderly couple remained a cherished part of the local community, inspiring everyone to live with integrity, support one another with kindness, and protect the peaceful harmony of their shared home.